Hey guys, what's going on? It's your boy, the Mad Kiger. And up here today, guys, I thought I'd do another sort of genre-based video. And today I'm going to be talking about some open world games. For those of you who don't really know what an open world game is, an open world game essentially means a game in which it takes place inside of, well, a big map, essentially. Where you can really explore and have the freedom to pretty much go and do whatever you want, basically, within the game's reasoning. Open world games have been around for a long time. They've been around since the early, PC days, PC game days, in the form of like the Dungeons and Dragons games, the Ultima series, and even like some text-based dungeon RPGs. But the games that I'm talking about today are official open world games, modern open world games. But I do want to acknowledge that, they've been around for a long time, even if it was in just text form. The whole point of an open world game is to go against the traditional style of linear gameplay, essentially. A more freedom-based gameplay in which you can just go off and you have a map. Instead of it being mission-based, you have a map. I'm trying not to focus just on like RPGs, although a lot of RPGs and JRPGs are open world. But I'm not going to be talking about loads of different RPGs. I've just got a bit of a streamlined selection here. But the first one that I have to talk about is, in my opinion, the series which made open world games into the mainstream, and that is the Grand Theft Auto series. Like I said, I'm not talking about each and every single game. I've just got games here for references, so pretty much everything in these series is an open world game. Grand Theft Auto started off on the PlayStation 1 as a top-down open world game, and for the most part it was a pretty fun game, but it wasn't until it made the transition to the PlayStation 2 and into 3D with Grand Theft Auto 3 and Vice City. Grand Theft Auto 3, I remember seeing this. My brother had it, I think he rented it, and I remember seeing it and thinking, oh my god, this is the best thing ever, because I'd never seen anything like it. Of course, the series went off in different styles. Of course, Vice City here, San Andreas, Grand Theft Auto 4, 5, Liberty City, all of these Chinatown Wars. But Grand Theft Auto's always been a game that's really thrived on the open world. Most of the time this game takes place in a city. Mostly, to be honest, it's like an American-based city with their own sort of style to it. Liberty City obviously being more based on like LA in the city, Los Santos, of course. Vice City was more of a Miami Vice, Miami style to it. But what made the Grand Theft Auto game so great in the open world department was really the whole exploration side of things. There's so many cool things in Grand Theft Auto games that people are still finding today, because the worlds are quite big. Of course, Grand Theft Auto 5 is the biggest open world game in the Grand Theft Auto series. But, San Andreas and Vice City, there's so many little places you can go. These games really really streamlined open world games with the drive-in, and you can walk and you can fly, and really just give you many means of freedom. Probably most people who grew up playing Grand Theft Auto didn't actually do missions in these games. They just put in a cheat code and just went to town. They went off and caused havoc, crazy stuff. But the Grand Theft Auto series is a really fun series that, if you are into open world games and you've never played a Grand Theft Auto game, definitely try one out, because there is so much to do in these games, and each game added new stuff to it. I do want to mention Red Dead Redemption as well. Red Dead Redemption 2 specifically, in my opinion, is the best open world. It's better than Grand Theft Auto in its open world, mostly because I feel like Grand Theft Auto is, again, a more realistic setting, a setting in which people can go out and, people live in LA and stuff like this, and New York and things like that. And it's all based in a city, whereas Red Dead Redemption is something that doesn't exist anymore. It used to exist, but it doesn't exist anymore. And I absolutely find that Red Dead Redemption 2 is such a gorgeous game world because there's so much to find in it. And because obviously you can't drive and you can't fly or anything, all you've really got is your 2 feet and your horse. You can really take your time. And I've still got so much stuff to do in Red Dead Redemption 2, finding things. And you can find some crazy little Easter eggs. The world is beautiful. You've got luscious forests, the deserts, plain, classic Western style, the mountains. And you never really know what you're going to find. And I find that Red Dead Redemption 2 is a better world to explore than Grand Theft Auto, just in my opinion. The next series that I want to talk about is the Mafia series. Now, Mafia takes place in the sort of, I think it takes place mostly in New York. I think this one takes place in New York. Now, Mafia 1 is getting a remake in August, and that's the one that I'll be getting, the complete collection. The second game, however, was more linear. But it did have an open world to it. And the third game, I really liked the third game in the series for its open world because it took place in the 60s. You were playing as an African American. I think he was African American. He might have been from somewhere else. But it really took place in a very distressing time. But that's not why I enjoyed it for that reason, because it was a nice piece of history. Well, not a nice piece of history, but it was something different that games don't really take a chance on. But the Mafia series is a great series because it really allows you to explore like older, like an older city. With obviously this one takes place in the 30s, and you've got older vehicles. Everything looks different. I love games that take place in a period set piece, a different period of time. Because like I said, Grand Theft Auto, some of them maybe take place in the 90s or 80s, but a lot of the things that in them still exist today. Whereas Mafia is much different. It's a universe, it's a world that is before our time, and even has a map here. So definitely feel like this game is definitely open world by the looks of it. Yeah, didn't even realise I had a map in there. But yeah, the Mafia series is definitely one worth checking out. Of course, if you enjoy like gangster movies, definitely even more so. Another series that has a great open world is the Just Cause series. Now, the first one is a little bit more linear, but the second game, in my opinion, had one of the biggest game worlds. The second game world was huge. I mean, it was just huge. It was probably like 3 times the size of Grand Theft Auto 4's map, maybe even more. It was huge. There are 4 games in the Just Cause series. Of course, the main source of moving about in Just Cause, you have the grappling hook, which you can fly around and stuff on, and that's always fun. But I still remember Just Cause 2. I've just got the first one here for reference, but the second one had a huge world, and similar to, like I said, with Red Dead Redemption 2, it had like a mountainous area, had a desert area, had a city area, snow area, water area, and the Just Cause series have always had these big islands to explore, and you never really know what you're going to find. I mean, Just Cause 2 is a huge world. All of the Just Cause games have a pretty decent sized map, and they're pretty fun open world games. Definitely check them out because they're really fun games. They're not overly great in story, but great in gameplay. Another series that a lot of people don't talk about these days is the Driver series. Now, I wanted to include at least one vehicle-based open world game. And then the Driver series, the first game wasn't really, well, it was kind of. But it was a really fun little idea of, these open worlds were different. These were like vehicle-based open world games. Of course, in the later series you can walk around and stuff, but Driver was always a pretty fun series, and it's really gone off the edge now. I know Atari helped create some of these games, but Driver is a game series that I would love to see a new Driver game, or at least maybe a remaster of one of the Driver games. I remember playing Driver 2 a lot on the PlayStation 1. The first game, of course, had one of the most hardest game tutorials, but the worlds in these games are pretty fun to explore. They all take place in their different sort of time period. I know Parallel Lines takes place in the 70s. So the Driver series has a great sense of time period to it. Each of them take place in different time periods as well. Another game that series that I'd love to see a remake of is True Crime New York City. There was also True Crime Streets of LA, but I find that New York City had a much better world to explore. Of course, in this game, you basically play as an undercover cop. And one of the greatest things about this game is, other than the fact that you get to explore like New York and stuff, one of my favourite things about this game is you could actually go into different buildings and stuff, into shops and pharmacies. And that was always really cool as a kid, because not many games you got to do that on. You know, even like some of the Grand Theft Auto games, you couldn't go into most buildings. And if you could, there was really nothing in there. You know, it was just a building with no functionality. But in New York, True Crime New York City is a really fun open world game. Definitely one worth checking out, and it is a cop-based game, so it is a really good game. Streets of LA is pretty fun too. I had to include the Elder Scrolls series. I've got here the Oblivion Game of the Year edition. I prefer Oblivion to Skyrim, but Skyrim, Oblivion, Morrowind, whatever Elder Scrolls game you're going to play, these are excellent open world games. The maps in these games are huge. There's so many cool things to find. It takes place in a fantasy setting. These games have everything from underground dungeons, haunted houses, you know, luscious forest, giant cities, villages, caves. So much to explore, and I find that the Elder Scrolls series is one of the best exploration games out there, especially as an RPG, and I love the Elder Scrolls series. Really love these games. I find that Oblivion had a bit more of a better game world than Skyrim, mostly because I love the empire building. But these games are so fun because, you know, you can go into these cities and these villages, and you can just go into taverns. It just basically takes everything from that classic fantasy worlds that we live in books and movies, and puts it into a video game and just wraps it up so well done, and really allows you to just be whoever you want to be. There's no restrictions in these games. You know, obviously the first part of the game is always the same, but once you get into the open world, that's it. You can go off and do whatever you want to do. If you want to go off and just be a mage and work on getting all of these magical powers, you can do that. If you want to be a trader and just go off and start buying stuff and selling it, you can do that. If you want to be an archer, you can do that. Elder Scrolls, in my opinion, is a must play. If you are into open world games, even more so, because these games are beautiful. The Oblivion isn't as beautiful as it used to be. The graphics are a little bit on the more outdated side, but it still looks pretty good, and it's still playable. But of course, Oblivion has the Oblivion gates, where you go into this like hell world, and it is something else. I remember my first time going into the Oblivion gate and being, oh my god, this is like Mordor. You know, but yeah, you know, it is absolutely a fantastic game. I am going to be doing a replay of Oblivion sometime, because this is backwards compatible, so I'm definitely going to have to replay this. Kind of in the mood to play it now. Another series that needs no introduction is the Assassin's Creed series. I've already told you how much I love history, and Assassin's Creed, I've just got the second one here for reference, but what's great about Assassin's Creed is they each take place in a different period of time. The first game takes place in ancient Jerusalem. The second one was mostly in Italy. There was also ones that take place in, you know, the American Revolution, in 1700 America. There's obviously one that takes place in Egypt, Assassin's Creed Origins. We've got the Valhalla game coming out. There's so many versions of Assassin's Creed, and what I love about the Assassin's Creed series is yes, they offer a pretty decent campaign, and the characters are lovable and memorable, and it offers a kind of a cool side of history. But I just love the Assassin's Creed worlds because they just have so many different. I just love exploring. They do have some sort of like Easter eggs and things that you can find, but I just love the exploration of Assassin's Creed. Just going around these old cities and these old places that in history, and just see them exploring. Great fun games. I will be trying to get all of the Assassin's Creed games on PS4 and do an Assassin's Creed playthrough. Another series that we've just got a new announcement for is the Far Cry series. I love the Far Cry series as an open world game. It's an open world, third person action, first person shooter action open world game. The first game I didn't think really was much of a open world game, but they definitely hit the nail on the head with Far Cry 2, 3 and onwards. These games take place always normally on an island, and these are just great first person shooters, and there's a lot of cool things to find, lots of nooks and crannies to get into. And the Far Cry series, I am looking forward to Far Cry 6. Am I going to get it day one? Probably not. But these are great open world games, and these are also pretty fun games for people that are into something a little bit different with their first person shooters. If you're more of a Call of Duty person, you want something different, more freedom to really do what you want. Far Cry is definitely a really fun game in the series, the hunting and everything. I had to include the Saints Row series. Of course, Saints Row was at first a GTA clone, but it really became its own thing. Of course, all 4 Saints Row games are pretty wacky in their own right. The 3rd and the 4th game really went out there and made them wacky. These worlds are pretty okay game worlds, but there's a lot of things you can find in them. These are pretty fun open world games. I know a lot of people compare them to Grand Theft Auto, but I find that Saints Row is more of its own thing than Grand Theft Auto because it doesn't take itself too seriously. And you know, there's a lot of crazy stuff you can do in them. Lots of fun customization options, of course, and stuff like that. And these are great co-op games. Definitely check out Saints Row if you're looking for something a little bit different. I already mentioned the Skyrim and that, but Fallout series are an excellent open world game set in wasteland, basically like a Mad Max style wasteland. And similar to Skyrim and Oblivion and Elder Scrolls, there's so many cool places to just explore. You know, what's great about these games, Fallout 4, but Fallout 3 and New Vegas are definitely worth checking out. The first and second game were very different to these ones, so I wouldn't recommend them to people that aren't into old school PC point and click style games. But these games are just great exploration games, you know, and because it takes place in like a post-apocalyptic world, there is a lot of like scariness to it. There is a lot of like weird, you know, when you're going into like the underground and these abandoned buildings, you never really know what's going to be lurking about in there. And these games don't hold back when it comes to like creepy things, you know. You know, there's ghouls and zombies and all of these crazy monsters and things. And the 4th game had a really fun thing where you could create like little towns and you could build like your own little towns and trade and stuff like that. The 4th game definitely had more to it in terms of gameplay, but the 3rd and the New Vegas often considered to be the better games. I can see why, but definitely check out Fallout if you are looking for an open world post-apocalyptic game. I had to mention Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War, even though it's not got the right disc in there, but I do have this somewhere else as well. I think I have the Game of the Year edition. These games are great games. These are like, if you enjoy Lord of the Rings, definitely check out the Shadow of War games, the Shadow of games, the Middle Earth games. Because, you know, what's really great about these games, it is fun to explore Mordor. And obviously Mordor is a great fun place to explore if you're into Lord of the Rings. But what I love about these games is just the whole combat system, the whole rival system. So basically there's a bunch of like guards like orcs and urukhais, and every time you kill one, that another one will take its place, and you're basically trying to take down like the captains and stuff. In a second game, it increases that even more. I haven't played the second one, but this is an amazing must-play game, and they're pretty cheap as well. The last one that I wanted to show was the Mass Effect series. The Mass Effect series, even though I personally haven't played too much of them, they are definitely worth checking out, because every game that I've talked about here is either taking place in a fantasy realm or a real life scenario. But if you're into sci-fi and you like space and Star Wars and spaceships and aliens, Mass Effect is a must play, because there's so many cool things to do in them. I also want to mention, if you enjoy Mass Effect, Dragon Age is another great selection of open world games. There's plenty of open world games that I haven't talked about. Some of the Lego games have open worlds, and they're pretty fun to explore if you're looking for a more child-friendly open world game. You know, there are loads of open world racing games like Need for Speed, some of the Burnout games, the Forza Horizon series, the Test Drive Unlimited. The list goes on. I just wanted to share with you some of the ones that I'd personally recommend to people that perhaps don't play a lot of open world games. Speaking of Mass Effect, there's also Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, Jade Empire. You know, there's so many open world games out there, and you know, like I said, I ain't even got into like JRPGs. You know, there's so many JRPGs with open world exploration, like Kingdom Hearts, for example, and just the list goes on. Final Fantasy, The Legend of Zelda, of course I had to mention The Legend of Zelda, Mario Odyssey. There's so many open world games out there, and you know, I'm trying to think of ones here. You know, and the thing is, open world games I find are some of my favourite ones, just because it has a great sense of freedom to it. Yes, you can play the game and play it how it's meant to be played, well, you know, doing all the missions and that, or you can just take your time and just take it all in and just go off and do whatever you want. That's the greatest thing about open world games to me, is just the whole freedom of choice. You know, there's no right or wrong way of doing it, and the ones that don't give you any like right or wrong and is non-linear as possible are the best ones. But anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, feel free to leave a like, and of course comment below. Let me know what some of your favourite open world games are. Are there any up and coming open world games you're looking forward to? I have heard that Ghost of Tsushima, I think that's what it's called, I could be wrong, is a massively must-play game. I might be getting it, but of course we will be doing a pickups video next week. I can't wait. I'm going to have a lot of fun doing that. And as always guys, feel free to subscribe if you haven't already, and join the family. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram and Twitch at The Mad Kyger. I will be streaming tonight, but I'm going to be streaming Rocket Arena. It's a new 3v3 game. It kind of mixes like something like Overwatch with like grappling, like the grappling hook from like Just Cause. I don't really know too much about it. My friend told me to install it, so I'm going to give it a go tonight with him and see what it's all about. Something different tonight. And as always guys, have a nice day, and I will see you in the next video. Take care and bye bye.